South Africa, efforts are also ongoing to find solutions to combat climate change. Angelo Coppola now reports.
Citizens increasingly are getting behind the Fridays for Future campaign, and local, regional and national governments are starting to take notice.
So as you see in South Africa today, there's extreme pollution, and our world has less than 12 years to fix itself. So unless we actively fight for what's right, there's no future for us.
The country's legislators are also beginning to put laws in place to change behaviours and reduce carbon emissions. In South Africa's case, it's taken several years to get the carbon tax regime in place, but it's unlikely to have the desired impact.
The carbon tax in itself is part of a mix of measures. Alone, it can give us about 5% reductions of all our carbon emissions, but that's only if we have it at 120. But now we're having it at about 5% penetration, or even 10%, and some industries will be paying about 30% penetration. So we're not even close to having at least 2% of the reductions that we would need.
Compliance to the legislation and regulations will be critical. Companies will need expert advice to determine their exposure and use processes to manage their emissions and reduce their tax burdens.
They're going to have to go one step back first to look at their carbon footprint, to look at where the emission sources are, and then from there to be able to calculate a tax liability. So to attend training, to attend workshops, to engage with specialists in the area. And then it's going to be a bit difficult for them, if they haven't engaged with the subject before, to be able to submit the returns on their own, because they won't know what to submit.
The challenge facing the regulators is that many of the businesses that are carbon-intensive users generally pass the cost on to their consumers.
Some of the industries, aside from just Eskom, are making sure that we, as the consumers, are paying for the very thing that they're supposed to be paying for. So they're not internalizing the costs. So if businesses are starting to internalize the costs, it's a different situation.
The carbon tax has only been part of the business environment for a couple of months now, but already they are starting to see some changes, and hopefully those changes will lead to bigger savings in terms of carbon usage and emissions. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.